Welcome to Rewatch and Rank. On this channel, we rewatch older TV shows, provide a summary and opinion on the episode before ranking each episode against each other. Today's episode is Merlin Season 5, Episode 11, The Diamond of the Day, the series finale. The episode is a double episode, so the episode in a nutshell will be a brief reminder of what happens in the episode, though perhaps a little longer than usual. So basically, the episode starts with Morgana testing out a creature which can steal magic, and when she finds that it is successful, she then sends it to Merlin, who ends up having his powers stolen. This is terrible timing, as Morgana's army is on the move, and Camelot is going to Camelin to face them. And for the first time, Merlin is not going to be joining Arthur because he has to go to the Valley of the Kings, to the Crystal Cave, to get his magic back. He gets escorted by Gawain, who he then sends back to be with Arthur in the battle. And when he arrives at the caves, because Gawain's girlfriend actually is a spy, Morgana is waiting for him, and she attacks him and traps him in the cave without his magic. However, then a vision of his father, Balinor, arrives and basically tells Merlin that he is magic itself and he cannot lose who he is, therefore he'll be able to get the magic back, and tells him to rest. Merlin then falls asleep. When he wakes up, all of his wounds are healed and his magic is back. Balinor appears again, or actually first, he looks at a crystal, sees that Morgana is planning to ambush Arthur while he's asleep. Basically, through the crystal, manages to communicate with Arthur and warn him of the ambush. So Arthur then wakes up, gets all of his knights ready, and that way they are there and ready for battle when Mordred arrives with a blade that Athusa has burnished, which basically makes it equivalent to Excalibur and also capable of killing Arthur. And then Merlin's dad comes back and basically tells him if he goes to the heart of the Crystal Cave, who he truly is will be revealed to him. And we then see Merlin breaking free of the cave as Dragoon the Great with his staff, and he then rushes towards the battle at Camlin. And then we see the battle, and there's fighting on screen. Merlin arrives and he makes a grand entrance. He arrives with lightning coming out of his staff and defeating the Saxons, and then he commands Athusa to leave the battlefield because Athusa was on Morgana's side and trying to hurt Camelot's side. Unfortunately, while he does make a big difference and does allow Camelot to win the battle, Mordred and Arthur end up facing each other, and Mordred stabs Arthur. Arthur then stabs Mordred, and because he's wielding Excalibur, Mordred does die. But a piece of the blade was lodged inside Arthur, so even though, the stab was in a non-fatal location, because the piece of the blade that was burnished in a dragon's breath is still inside of Arthur, it is unfortunately killing him. So Merlin, as Dragoon the Great, picks him up, takes him from the battlefield, and once he wakes up, Merlin reveals he's a sorcerer. Arthur at first rejects him because he has a thing against sorcerers, obviously. Gaius comes, takes a look at Arthur, confirms the blade is there, and that the solution is to take him to the Lake of Avalon, where the Sidhe may be able to assist in saving him. And so Merlin and Arthur then start a journey through the woods on horseback, and as they go, he and Arthur have some heart-to-hearts, some conversations, questions are asked and answered, and by the time Morgana reappears, having killed Gawain, and extracted Arthur's projected destination from Gawain, we have some forgiveness from Arthur for Merlin. Morgana then arrives, and she is killed by Excalibur, which is the only weapon that could kill her, because as a high priestess, she, similar to Mordred and Arthur and everybody else who's in this main prophecy. Um, that's the only thing that could kill her. So Morgana then dies. Um, and then Merlin takes Arthur, but he starts to fade. And once he passes out, Merlin then decides to call Kilgara. Kilgara arrives, takes him to the lake. Unfortunately, by then, Arthur has passed on. But Kilgara tells Merlin to essentially take heart. He's the once and future king, meaning he will rise again, and there's still a long journey ahead of them, and that the story that they've been a part of will live in the minds of men forever before he flies off, saying it was a pleasure to have known and worked and been friends with Merlin. Merlin then sends Excalibur into the lake, and we see the Lady of the Lake's hand reach up and grab it before he then sends Arthur off into the lake. And we then see a modern transport truck on a road with an aged Merlin walking next to the lake in the modern day. And that is how the series ends. Anyways, now that we've been reminded what happened in the episode, we'll now rank the episode. As always, we'll start with our mostly objective ranking list, which uses set values to determine the score, and while it does not have emotional influence, bias and judgment can still apply. And then we have the personal ranking list, which is entirely bias and judgment, fully my personal opinion and what I consider the entertainment value. So, as this was the series finale, a lot happened. And it's also a double episode, so again, a lot happened. We had single episode supporting character introductions. We had Ari, who is the ally of Morgana that she stole magic from to test the creature before giving it to Merlin. We had Ira, who is introduced as Gwain's girlfriend, who is actually a spy for Morgana, and she is the one who initially lets Morgana know about everyone going to Camlan, and then she also is caught at the end telling Morgana where to find Arthur after Gwain tells her. And she is then routed out, and she does end up being executed by hanging by Gwen. Then we have the multi-season supporting character developments. Morgana dies, Mordred dies, Gwain dies, Athusa burnishes a sword to kill Arthur, and Gwen is crowned Soul Queen upon Arthur's death. I mean, she was already queen, but like they have a scene at the end where Leon is like, the king is dead, long live the queen. Like they're coronating her again because now she's ruling alone, not with Arthur. So basically a little ceremony to confirm that Arthur's dead and she's now going to be ruling alone again. Then we have the impactful, memorable moment line, etc. And that would be Merlin's battle entrance because that was an epic scene. I did really enjoy that. Overall, the war scenes were pretty good, and of course, that modern day ending. Then we have the multi-season main character developments. Arthur dies. Arthur finds out about Merlin's magic. Merlin's magic is stolen, and Merlin is revealed to be magic itself, and also immortal, because again, it ends on the modern day. Then we have the world building, which is the Ginkanak, which is the creature that is able to devour the magic of others used against Merlin. And by now, I think everybody knows what the score of this finale will be objectively, because we're so far above 10 that it's going to be a 10 out of 10. But we still do have some negatives. First, of course, stealing magic from an ally especially, bad behavior. I mean, that man was devastated to lose his magic, and given how important magic is to most of the magical people that we have met in the series, that's devastating for him. And so the fact that she used it on one of her own allies is very terrible. -2 points. Obviously, there's murder all around. Mordred murdered Arthur. Merlin murdered Morgana. Arthur murdered Mordred. Morgana murdered Gawain. Lots of murder going on. And some of it was in the context of a battle, like the Mordred-Arthur mutual destruction took place in battle. But technically the battle was over at that point. Like they were the only two still fighting. Um, and then Merlin against Morgana was murder because that was outside of a battle, and similarly, Morgana and Gwaine outside of a battle. So -2 for that as well. However, as mentioned, 10 out of 10. And that brings us now to our definitive season 5 episode ranking on the mostly objective ranking reminder, and the final reminder that when more than one episode has the same score, it is just ranked in episode order on the mostly objective list. So we have in first place Arthur's Bane, followed by second, The Death Song of Uther Pendragon, third, The Disseer, fourth, The Kindness of Strangers, fifth, The Diamond of the Day, sixth, The Hollow Queen, seventh, With All My Heart, eighth, Another Sorrow, ninth, The Dark Tower, 10th, A Lesson in Vengeance, and then in 11th place we have The Drawing of the Dark. And now we come to my personal ranking, and I have mixed feelings about the finale. I hate tragedies, and the fact that Arthur died at the end is to me a tragedy, and I don't enjoy stories that don't have happy endings, typically. So even though I love the series overall, I'm not overly fond of how it ended. Additionally, Mordred, he's like, you left me no choice when he stabs Arthur. And much like how the last episode really peeved me off, same here. I'm like, you had every choice and chance to make a different choice. Like, you had choice. He did not leave him with no choice. Mordred just was butthurt, and it really sucks that, Arthur had to not fulfill his destiny of uniting all of the kingdoms into Albion, revitalizing magic, and ruling an epic kingdom. However, also saying that throughout the series, Merlin made some pretty bad choices that ultimately led him here to their destinies not being fulfilled. And I know they tried to cushion the blow of Arthur's death by saying, oh, he'll rise again one day, and look, modern day, Merlin's there, he could still be coming. No, I'm sorry, but I don't like it. However, that ending has spawned some pretty good fan fiction that I've read before, and so I'm not super mad that they left it open like that, because it did open the door for the creatives in the fan fiction community to really run with it, and some of them have made some pretty good stories that I have read, and so I will give him that. I also did like the Crystal Cave scene. The battle scenes were well done. The entrance onto the field was epic. Gwaine dying was really, really devastating because he didn't have to die, because honestly, by that point, well, honestly, okay, he goes after Morgana after Ira sends her a message to try to stop her from going after Merlin and Arthur. However, all he ends up doing is getting captured, getting killed by Morgana after she tortures him with the Nathir, which we know um, is a torture implement to extract information from people. And so he died for nothing, essentially, because he went to stop Morgana. He just ends up giving her information. And then she goes to attack Arthur and Merlin, like, defeats her super easily. And frankly speaking, that means that Gwaine really didn't have to step in at all, because even had Morgana found them without Gwaine in the middle, one, she probably would have been delayed in finding them, and two, once she found them, she probably still would have been just as easy for Merlin to kill. So he died for nothing, and it was very sad about that. Um, and I did like in the second half the touching moments between Arthur and Merlin, but also at the same time, he could have called Kilgara from the start. Like, there was no reason he had to wait until Arthur was dead. Like, I mean, yeah, it gave us those moments between them, but had he called Kilgara from the get-go, they'd have been at the same day. The sheep could have interfered. Arthur could have continued to live, rule his kingdom, die of natural causes, and then in the future rise again. Again. You know what I mean? Once in future king. There was no reason it had to be a tragedy, and had Merlin just not made that final bad decision of not calling Kilgara from the get-go, we could have had a happy ending pretty easily. So that also is something that I'm not happy with, because one decision change. And you know what? If Arthur survived, Merlin would have had plenty of time to have those moments to get Arthur to come around, to forgive him. And even if Arthur didn't forgive him, he could have watched from the sidelines and, Arthur would rise again still. Honestly, we could have had a happy ending. We were one decision away from a happy ending. And once again, Merlin made a dumb decision by trying to go by horse instead of dragon to save Arthur's life. And this is to save Arthur's life. Like, why did you not call Kilgar from the start? Especially since that's what he ends up doing at the end anyways, and ends up being too late. So, overall, I have mixed feelings. I think the effects were good, the battle was good, but the decisions were bad. And the first half of the episode was honestly way better than the second. And overall, because it is the finale, because it did give us a good ending, at least as far as the resulting fan fiction that came out of the ending, um, I decided to give it an 8, but because of the issues that were with it, I couldn't give it higher than an 8. And even then, I gave it like a low 8. I was actually debating a 7, but then I was like, you know what, it is the finale, so that gives it more grace. So even though I wasn't happy with the ending, and I do think that there were ways, like one decision away from it being a happy ending, um, I still decided to give it an 8. So the definitive personal ranking list, therefore, is as follows. In first, Arthur's Bane. Second, Another's Sorrow. Third, With All My Heart. Fourth, The Death Song of Uther Pendragon. This episode I put into fifth, The Diamond of the Day, followed by The Kindness of Strangers, The Hollow Queen, A Lesson in Vengeance, The Dark Tower, The Desir, and then in last place for me was The Drawing of the Dark. Bringing us now to the series ranking, and it is the definitive series ranking because all of the seasons have been completed. They all have their final scores, and we now get to see where all of them rank against each other on the list. So on our mostly objective ranking list, we had season 4 in first place with 86.36%. Season 5 came in second with 75.45%, followed by Season 2 at 70.83%, Season 3 with 70%, and Season 1 was in last place with 69.23%. My personal ranking list, this is our definitive list again. So Season 4 was in first place for me as well, which was 79.09%. Followed by Season 3 that scored 72.73%. Season 2 was in third with 70.83%. This season came in fourth place with 69.09%, and for me, Season 1 is also in last place with 66.92%. But with that, we have now rewatched and ranked Merlin Season 5, Episode 11, The Diamond of the Day, our series finale. Like and subscribe if you'd like to, and I'll see you in the bonus rankings next week, followed by a brand new series that I'm really excited about the week after that.